Hi, Janelle.
Hi, Tabby.
How are you today?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. I'm so excited to be here with you today and introduce our new series for families called Advocacy That. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what we're doing here today?
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited to be here as well. So we were thinking that parents, like ourselves, need just little nuggets from time to time, and especially with COVID, we have a hard time of like sitting on these long webinars for 20, 30 minutes. So we thought we'd put together short little 2 to 3 minute videos answering really poignant questions that could help improve our parents' skills as advocates, but ultimately help our kids become better advocates.
Tell us about you.
All right, so I am a mom of 4 kids, and I have 3 typical hearing children, and one who is what he identifies as being deaf plus. So has a moderate to severe or profound hearing loss. And he also is peripheral blind and has sensory memory processing issues. So he's got a couple different things. Now I have 3 older kids, and he's a part of the youngest of those 3. He's 19, and then I have a 10-year-old. So my family's kind of crazy, and I do run, or I'm the director for Michigan Hands and Voices, and I also run the ASTRA program, which is the same thing that Tabby does in Ohio. I do that here in Michigan, and it's just an advocacy support and training program for parents and professionals specific to deaf and hard of hearing kiddos. So I've been excited to work with Hands and Voices for many years, and in particular the advocacy program for the past around 5-6 years.
Excellent. So as parents, we know that we often have this moment in time that kind of seals our fate as becoming advocates for our children, right? So, when we had deaf children, most of us didn't know that we were going to have deaf children, and newborn screening or later identification helped us realize that we have deaf or hard of hearing children. And we don't know, like, there's a lot to learn on that journey. So do you have that moment in time where you were like, whoa, I've got to do this? Like,
Yeah.
What was that?
Oh my goodness. So there were a couple experiences like that, but one in particular that really makes me think about changing from being a mom and going through the days, and then really like saying, okay, I've got to step up and do something. And it was at a conference. It actually was at a Hands and Voices leadership conference. And I was sitting into in a session, and I remember getting up and asking a question. My son was in 3rd grade, and things were not going well at all. Had issues with his teachers, his one teacher particularly. She just couldn't get him, he couldn't get her. And I was battling that whole thing of trying to get things done without ruffling feathers too much.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't being a good advocate, basically. I think I was just too emotional about a lot of stuff, and I just wasn't ready. And I remember sitting in this session, and I asked the question, like, how do you change it so that you can actually stand up for yourself? And I just remember the presenter saying, well, you get to a point where you just think to yourself, you got to put your big girl panties on. And I just like, oh, like it totally made sense to me. I had to really just kind of like step up and take that another step to like really say, you know what, he deserves this. I'm his parent. I can do this. I need to have the confidence to do the right thing, and to really, and to be confident in myself that I was a respectable person, that I wasn't going to just go out and lash out, but to really kind of like get the confidence I needed, and also drive that's needed to be really good advocate, to get the information I needed to make a difference, and to just go forward and not worry about what everybody else is thinking, but to really think about him and his needs and how to get that done.
Mhm.
So, but I just remember that good, pull up the big girl panties really made a difference with me. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds to me like you made a very proactive and conscious choice to become Mason's advocate.
Mm-hmm.
For me, and maybe some of the parents that are listening today, for me, I think it was more of it was more subtle. I didn't necessarily consciously make that choice. But I do remember there was a moment in time for us, like our first big advocacy experience when my daughter, who is the same age as Mason, she's 19, but she was in preschool. So she had just transitioned into preschool, and she was going to this preschool program. I'm not going to talk to you about like what program it was or what the communication mode is, right? Because that's kind of irrelevant. It's irrelevant because we're just focusing on her educational outcomes here. But she was attending a preschool. Her birthday's in December. So she went to this preschool program for, the second half of the school year. And then in the summer, she went to a summer program at a different camp that was a different communication mode. So our focus had really been to just give her every opportunity to develop language and follow her lead. So at the end of that summer program, I looked at her language and I was like, wow, she's made so much more progress in 6 weeks here at this program than she did in the 5 or 6 months where she was going to preschool. And so I remember at that moment, I was like, okay, she was set to go back to the preschool in the fall. And I was like, she's got to change. And so I was like, okay, how do I do a change of placement? And so I talked to some people, and I remember calling the director for her current preschool placement. And I explained to him what I saw and what I thought, and I think it's time for her to change schools. And I just remember his response at that time to me was, well, that's your opinion. And it struck such an emotional reaction, right? Well, number one, she's my child, and I have her best interests at heart. And this is my decision again, because she's my child. And so, but looking back, I can now realize that particular instance was really the one that lit my fire, that I was my child's advocate. And I was the only one that was going to be with her from birth to my death, hopefully my death. Like, I'm going to be with her for the whole lifespan. And that choice was ours. So, and as frustrating as it was in that moment, now I can look back at that and think, and thank him for helping me come to that realization and setting forth on the right path for my child.
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy to be able to look back and see that it's when the things get really rough that we as parents are like kind of like backs to the wall type of thing. We have to make a choice of what we're going to do, and trying to kind of figure out what that is and get the confidence to do it is, I think, is really a place where where you gotta have some information to help you out along the way, and to get you through. So was there anybody that helped you then at that point, and to get her the right placement?
So the person who was running the summer camp program that she went to actually was a parent of a deaf child, and also used to be a parent mentor at that school. And so she was able to help me understand the process and said, this is what this is how you start the change of placement. But beyond that phone call with the one director who said, well, that's your opinion, there wasn't much else. We called an IEP meeting, and there wasn't a lot of, there was no grumbling about changing the placement. So my homeschool district was okay with that. So, overall, that was a good experience. But I know, listen, we just talked about our goal was to have short snippets, right? And so we've already talked way too much on this first video, but for all of our listeners, I wanted you guys to get to know us, listeners, viewers, maybe both, I don't know. We wanted you to get to know us and what our program is going to be about. So Janelle, I'm gonna, until next week, we're gonna leave you with this of, learning, becoming an advocate is a process. And, parents, you won't know how to do it all at once. And you're gonna learn so much over the years and on your journey. We are here for you. We wanna help you on that journey. Be sure to reach out to Michigan Hands and Voices or Ohio Hands and Voices. And until next week, no, wait, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Well, I think what I'm trying to just say is we'll see you next week.
Yes, advocacy that.
Yes. Thanks, Janelle.
All right, thank you.